Hello, hello. Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay? Mics are working good. All right, everybody, we are going to get started. Thank you for coming in. We have a little quick welcome video for you guys we want you to check out up here on the big screen, and then we will do introductions and get going. So here we go. Hi, and welcome to the second annual Pikes Peak Regional Building Open House. We appreciate you joining us today, and we hope you walk away from this class having learned a lot. We'll kick things off with a brief overview of what PPR BD is and what we do here in the Pikes Peak region. PPR BD was started back in 1966 by an intergovernmental agreement, or IGA, between El Paso County and the city of Colorado Springs. As the Pikes Peak region grew, so did we. Today, PPR BD not only services El Paso County and Colorado Springs, but Fountain, Manitou Springs, Monument, Palmer Lake, Green Mountain Falls, and the town of Woodland Park in Teller County. So what do we do? Well, we make sure contractors have the proper licenses to do work here in the Pikes Peak region and ensure all work is done in a code-compliant manner, from plan review and permitting to new construction, remodels, and re-roofs. Our goal is to keep our citizens safe through efficient and the consistent application of adopted codes and standards. We do that by reviewing and inspecting the design, construction, quality of materials, use, and occupancy of all buildings and structures under our jurisdiction.
One of the best things about regional building and the way that regional building operates is the same codes are in place all throughout El Paso County, and the same expectations occur all throughout El Paso County. So it doesn't matter where a building is built, whether it's in the city of Colorado Springs or way out east on the plains, the same criteria applies and the same level of expectations and service is there.
The department is governed by the Regional Building Commission, a three-member governing body consisting of one county commissioner designated by the El Paso County Board of County Commissioners, one council member designated by the Colorado Springs City Council, and one elected official chosen by the other member jurisdictions served by PPR BD. Probably one of the biggest misconceptions about regional building is that we are the city or we are the county and that we get tax funding. That's actually not the case. We aren't the city or the county. We are a separate entity and we don't receive one dime of tax money. Instead, the department is completely funded through permit, plan review, and license fees. With that said, we are proud to say that our fees have not been increased in 11 years, and we have some of the lowest building fees in the state of Colorado. In fact, when it comes to single-family homes, we have the lowest fees in the state, and compared to most of the other building departments, it's not even close.
Our low fees allow people to build and construct things at a reduced cost, and we've been able to increase efficiency throughout the years to be able to match the revenue that we receive. The fact that we can offer outstanding service at a reduced fee over other building departments just makes us that much better, and we're very proud of that here at Regional Building.
It takes everyone in the community to keep our homes, schools, hospitals, offices, retail stores, and other buildings safe for public use. Building codes and safe construction practices help make it all possible. We hope to build on those safe practices today through education. The more informed homeowners and contractors are, the smoother the building process will go and the safer our community will be. Again, thank you for coming to our open house. We hope you enjoy this class, and we look forward to working with you on future projects. All right, so first, just to introduce myself. I was in the video there. I'm Greg DiGrando, and I'm the Public Information Officer for RBD, and I will hand it off to Jay Eanhouse, and this is his crew here on plan review, and that's why you guys are all here this morning.
Thank you, Greg. Again, my name is Jay Eanhouse. I'm the Deputy Building Official here at Regional Building, in charge of the Plan Review Department. I brought with me actually only about a third of the staff that we have in plan review. I've got Shelby Erickson, who is our senior plans examiner for the MEP side. Amy Vanderbeek is our enumerations plan reviewer. Michael Augenstein is one of our construction plan reviewers. Justin Couturier is our mechanical plans examiner. And Becky Allen, she's our plan review support specialist. So if you guys ever make a submittal electronically, she's usually the first one you talk to. So thank you guys for taking your time to come out here today. So we're going to start with our PowerPoint presentation here. And basically what we're trying to do is set up this class to help you guys get through the plan review process, give you an idea of some of the major pitfalls that we see, some of the common red line comments we make on, every plan review we do for a deck or every plan review that we do for a basement finish, just things that get missed all the time. So first we'll take a look at how we got to the 2017 Regional Building Code. We started the review of the new codes in January of 2015. Going through it, seeing what we needed to change to make things work for our area. Sorry, that was May of 2015. Then, after our internal review, we came up with our preliminary regional building code, took that to jurisdictions for review and approval. That started in November of 2017, and that actually wasn't finalized until maybe 6 months later, at which point we went for an implementation date of June 1st. And because there were significant changes between the old code and the new code, we ended up giving a 6-month grace period. So end of that grace period occurred on December 1st, 2018. So now here we are in 2019. Everything that gets submitted needs to be submitted to the new 2017 Regional Building Code, which references the 2015 I-codes, including the 2015 International Residential Code, which is what that's the code that all of these projects actually come out of. I went out of order, didn't I? You did. All right. Feel free to ask questions at any time. We've got an hour and a half in here. We do have basically the last half of this class reserved for either your specific project questions or just general questions, okay? So, some of the questions we normally get, either via email or from the phone. What type of projects are allowed as a homeowner? Well, we've got this specifically written into the Regional Building Code. So, licenses shall be required to perform any work requiring a permit. That's a contractor's license. However, the exception reads, any person who owns and resides in or intends to reside on a property suitable for a 1 or 2 family dwelling may construct or erect on that property without a license 1 and 2 family dwellings and any structures accessory thereto. So you can build your own house. You can also put a shed in the backyard. Item 2, which is part of the exception, you can enlarge, remodel, alter, repair, maintain, improve, convert, or demolish without a license on any 1 or 2 family dwelling. So that gives you the ability to do work in your own home. Now the caveat is you have to live there or you have to intend on living there. If you're a property owner and you're renting out your second home, that requires a contractor. That cannot be done by a homeowner. So that takes you to the second question. What if it is a rental property? Again, contractor is going to be required for any rental property. Who can create and submit project plans? Anybody. You guys can come in. We hate to say it, but I think we have seen it. Come in with a sketch on a napkin. We're going to take a copy of it and make it actual paper, obviously, but anybody can create and submit the project plans, from a licensed design professional, such as an architect or engineer, to you guys doing your own sketches. Do plans need to be checked in for review? The answer to this is, well, it depends. Our walkthrough review counter is open from 9 a.m. to 11:45 and from 1 p.m. to 3:45 Monday through Friday. Plan reviews at the walkthrough counter, however, are limited to 15 minutes. So our guys could get started on it and then determine that this review is going to take a lot longer than 15 minutes. So we're going to ask that you check it in at that point. So these guys can then look at it in their office. We get done with it a little quicker in the office because there actually is less distraction. So how long does plan review take? Well, I'll answer this the same way. It depends. It really depends on how many plans we have sitting in the bin at the time your plan comes in. We review all plans based on the plan tracking number that's assigned to it, going from lowest to highest. So right now, I think we have about 75 plans in at least the construction bin. So if you checked in a plan right now, you would have 75 in front of you before yours was up for review. Other times, we have maybe 10, 5 to 10. It just depends. It seems like plans come in waves all the time. People just hold on to their plans and somehow secretly decide they're all going to submit at one time. And is an architect or engineer required? For single-family dwelling, no. An architect or engineer is not required unless what you're proposing to do does not fall under the prescriptive requirements of the International Residential Code. The IRC gives us quite a bit of direction on how to get things done. But if you want to go out and build your house out of hay bales, we don't have a path for that in the IRC. So at that point in time, an engineer is going to be required for that design. Do you guys have any questions before I move to the next slide? Yes? Average time frame, we just did a quick research study over the past year and come to find out that usually the average is between 4 to 6 weeks. So again, depending on how many plans there are, you know, sometimes that could be an 8-week process, sometimes it could be a 2. But a lot of times the projects that you're doing require outside agency reviews. So in addition to the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and construction review you're getting from regional building, that plan also has to travel to outside departments such as zoning and utilities. So and we don't have any control over their timeframes. Really all we can control is our BD timeframes.
How about footings and foundations? Are those required to be engineered for?
Footings and foundations are the one element that is required to be engineered. However, those, for instance, on a new house, those aren't required at the time of plan review. They need to be prepared by the design professional and submitted to our inspector in the field when you call for that first inspection. There are projects that do require the foundation design at time of plan review. For instance, foundation repair. That's the scope of work, so that's what we need to look at in plan review. So some of the handouts that we had over on the table, I hope you guys picked them up on your way in. All of those are available on our website. So if you're doing a project that's not one of those 4 that we're going to use as an example here today, feel free to go to the website, and there's at least 20, I think, documents on there. So just skim through them, and hopefully there's one that meets your project type. And if you have any questions on that as you're reading through it, feel free to give us a call. So to get to that sheet, you go from our homepage, click on Handouts and Forms, which is the far right button. Looks similar to this. And then the residential handouts. So I'm going to turn it over to Becky and Shelby. They're going to talk about some common electronic plan submittal triage comments that they make.
Hi. How many of you have submitted plans electronically or interested in submitting plans electronically? Okay. Well, I'm the first step. As Jay said, a lot of plans, they're given plan tracking numbers. I see it before you're assigned a plan tracking number, just to see if you have everything. And it just helps streamline your review way better. So as you can see, I have several topics that I turned down. Well, I'd ask for extra stuff. A lot of the times the site plan is kind of nestled in your architectural plans. There is a certain folder for that. Try and submit for each folder. If you do have questions on what needs to be submitted for each folder, you could always let me know. Our website has a whole bunch of handouts on what is a required document, and then that required document is a folder, as Shelby and I call a folder. So anyway, The missing required documents are a big one. Generally, it's mechanical documents are missing. The two forms we have are both required. It's the HVAC certificate and the IECC, which is the code energy, or the energy code form. It won't let you submit them if you're missing them, but if they're combined with the wrong files, it will still come through, and then I'll turn it down asking for these required documents. Moving on to construction, the truss detail sheets are not a required document because you might be building with rafters. The rafters are not a required document. So anyway, they must be stamped by an engineer. Sometimes folks submit them without that stamped, required stamp on them. Be sure that that stamp's on there. Mechanical duct designs, do not, like I said, do not combine documents that have their own folder. So, yeah.
Can you hear me without the microphone? No, we're recording. You have to? Yeah. And so what we're really getting at, a lot of that gets into technicalities you probably won't confront with every kind of plan. But if you get in touch with us and you know what to submit, the electronic plan review process works pretty well. But it's going to be daunting the first time. I mean, I found it the first time I looked at it. But if you get involved with us, you know, if you're working and you're on your break submitting this from your work computer, it's a real good, quick way to do it. But be patient. You're going to have to figure out what we mean by some of the terminology. Like when we say folder, that's going to be the different places that you upload stuff into your electronic submittal. So if you choose to go that route, be a little bit patient, but it is a really good way to do it. Especially if you're, you know, if you are really pressed for time and you can't come down here. The fastest way by far is the walkthrough. I wanted to touch on that. So we have these average times for plans. Let's say that you came down and you did a consultation for a deck, and then you went back and you prepared your plans for the deck. It wouldn't be 4 to 6 weeks. Same with, for instance, solar. Let's say you want to put solar on your house and you came down and you did some sort of preliminary investigation. You looked at what's on the website. It is completely possible that you can walk out of here in 1 or 2 visits with that permit for your solar. So that's what evens out. You know, obviously, if you submit a $1 billion project, that's going to be what gets the longer review times. Does that make sense? So they're really engage us. We really want to have the smoothest process as possible, and you're not going to get it from just looking at the website. That's a good way to start, but some human interaction will really make it go a lot quicker. And then you can actually see that we are people. Because I know that before I took this job, you look at the building department as some sort of like monolithic obstructionist bureaucracy, and it's not really that way. No laughing. Anyway, I'll give it back to Becky.
I will point out that depending on the project type that you're submitting, the list of required documents changes. Obviously, you need a lot more documents when you're building an entire house as opposed to doing a shed in your backyard. So keep that in mind when you're going through the electronic process. After you put in your address and some basic project information, once you have that project type selected, the next page that will show the required, the next page for where you perform your uploads, that'll actually show you a list of required documents. Sometimes there's only 2, sometimes there's 5. It just depends on the project.
And a lot of the projects that homeowners submit are your basement finishes and your decks and your remodels. You really don't need any more than 1 page, which I'll explain, just to keep it a little bit more simple. We do have a couple questionnaires that you'll need to fill out, but it should be pretty simple. And then one other thing I would like to add, if you don't see any movement on your plan, double check. Go back in and see if that submit plan button is still green. If that's the case, you did not hit the submit button. Happens all the time. Just double check that, and then your plan will go through.
What that submit plan button does is it just notifies us that you guys are done uploading. Otherwise, we don't know. You could still have some documents that you're waiting on, say your manufactured truss calcs. You're waiting on them from the truss manufacturer. You upload those at the last minute and then hit submit, then we know you're ready to go.
Yep. And you'll see a nice green banner on the top of the screen that says your plan has been submitted.
Is it a general list of owners on it, or is it specific to your job? Or do you
It is specific to the project type.
folder have to be addressed, or do you pay, or?
You'll see next to it, you'll see where it's required and where it's optional. So for instance, the deck, or the accessory structure, your shed, some people build that out of manufactured trusses, others just use rafters. So we've got manufactured trusses listed there just in case that's how the construction's gonna go. Otherwise, it's just listed as optional. It doesn't have to be submitted.
If you're building a shed, you don't have to go through, you have to have MAP file and all that stuff, right?
No.
No.
Are you gonna heat that shed?
And try your best to select the correct project that you need, because that sometimes messes up the required documents, like
Right.
the site plan, very important. I check to see if it's there, however, other departments are reviewing that, your zoning, your city, and your El Paso County zoning departments.
You want to talk about resubmittals? Some of the same issues you see in resubmittals as you do at
Resubmittals?
initial submittals, right?
Exactly, and this applies for commercial projects as well. Just be sure to submit all of the sheets that were in that first folder. Let's say your architectural plans. Don't just submit like the framing plan. Let's say your reviewer had disapproved that framing plan. Submit the entire architectural plans, not just that one revised page. That's a biggie. No. Yeah, when you when you are turned down, you'll receive an email that says you need to submit new documents. So you would just submit new documents associated with that plan number or electronic plan number. I think that's it.
Any questions on electronic plans? Again, if you have any questions as you're going through it, if you want to try it, feel free to call us. We can walk you through it.
Can I add to that? Once again, if you're submitting and you don't, especially if you're in a hurry, get in contact with us and find out what, that we have what we need. Because if you submit it and then you go into the queue and then you get to your point and the information is wrong or incomplete, then that's a disapproval. We can't approve if we don't have complete information. If you would go about it the other way and research whether or not you have the right information, it's a real force multiplier because you're going to save time. So we are really open and accessible. You can come in here pretty much every day of the week, and you can also call us, and we try to return all our phone calls. So use this as a resource. Thank you.
So the next slide we're going to look at is more of a general plan submittal. So whether it be paper or electronic, these are some of the most common disapproval comments that we make. Shelby, I'll let you talk about this one if you like.
Sure. So common disapproval comments, incomplete submittals. And this kind of ties in right to what I was saying before we switch to this slide. If you don't know if you've got, like imagine you're dealing with the DMV. We've all done that. And you never seem to have all the forms you need when you go there. You get there, you think you're going to knock it out, and then you need one more thing, especially if you're, it's an older vehicle. It's the same kind of with us. I hate to paint us with the same brush, but there are so many different requirements that if you research what you need exhaustively, it'll be much less frustrating when you come in here, because first time submittals, first time anything, when you come in, you almost can be guaranteed of not having all the information, not necessarily even what you're submitting, but there's just something you don't know that you need, so you didn't go and look at it. We have mechanical reviews. People come in for that all the time, and they don't know the type of furnace, how many BTUs the furnace is, and that's something they need to do their review. If you knew that, you could go look. And that's something, kind of get ahead of as much as possible. So that's really the first part, incomplete submittals. That's probably the biggest thing. We're just missing something. And interact with us and we can really help you on that. If you go up to zoning, now this is not RBD. This is, when we talk about regional building department, that's one thing for pretty much the whole area. But you have your different zoning authorities. You have Colorado Springs, you have the county, you have Fountain, and these different zoning departments are going to need different things. We got some specifics in here. Exceeds maximum lot coverage. That, of course, is a problem. Distance to property lines are built within setback. Project type not allowed on your property. You know, if you're a homeowner and you want to put a oil derrick in there, someone's going to probably have a problem. Moving on to general disapproval comments, non-conventional construction requires engineer stamp plans. So if you put a pole barn up, you're going to need to have an engineer stamp plan if you're not agricultural exempt. Wrong codes or no codes specified on the plans. So once again, I guess what I want to come back to again and again is use this as a resource for getting these things done. We'd rather, as we started out this program, we get our money by selling permits. We have no incentive for not giving you a permit. So we'd like to help you get one. And if you come in, you might be pleasantly surprised just how easy it is once you start the interaction. Anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I do. I live in the city of Fountain. I live on that little strip that's coming out of Walmart. So it's not in Fountain proper, it's that strip that was annexed, I think in 2008.
Yep.
I bought a property, it's a home, about 3 acres, and we did an extensive remodel in 2011, 2012. Came in, got my permit, brought you all my stuff, no problems with that. Found out later, after the fact, that we should have gone through the city of Fountain, which we didn't know. We just came straight to regional building, and it was not a problem getting approved and doing the remodel. But like we're looking at an accessory, a standalone garage, because we don't really have, the house is an old house, it's a small garage. So we want to do like a freestanding garage. They have that property, and it's always been zoned since before I purchased it, Village Center District. So even though it's listed on the schedule with the assessor as RR1, which is residential, they haven't listed us as for zoning. It didn't preclude me from remodeling, but it's not from building anything else on the property. So how do we resolve that? Does that
Well,
make sense?
to put it simply, and I use this a lot when people ask, what do I need from zoning? Basically, zoning tells you what you can build and where. Then it's up to us at Regional Building to determine how that's done. Is the how that you're proposing, does that meet code? So once you get approval from zoning for, yes, I can build this type of project in this location, that's really the first step. The second step is us saying, how do I get it done?
Okay. So I'd have to get the zoning address first.
Yeah, I think that would be your best bet to save you any headache that you may run into, down the road. Okay. We have a representative from the City of Fountain here today.
Let's go to the planning department. Yeah, it's really weird, we're stuck in the middle, and there's residential behind us, residential next to us, and then planned urban development on the other side of us. And I'm like, how did we get stuck in this middle for Village Center District?
Right. Is this the same parcels, kind of the same strip we were talking about yesterday with the carport? That one strip?
That's way north, that's north of.
Oh, okay.
She's over by the Walmart.
I'm actually next door to your reservation hall.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Saw another question back here.
Yeah, okay, so I'm relatively new to all of this, alright, so, not good information, so a lot of this may go over my head.
Okay.
The question I have then is, because all of a sudden, when you start talking zoning, it sounds to me we're talking apples and oranges compared to what your office is responsible for doing. So my question is where, it sounds to me the first step is to, like you said earlier, find out what you can and cannot build in your area. So where do you go to find that? Because you just mentioned city and state, or county and city. Who am I supposed to go to then if I want to, I don't know, the Armageddon's coming, so I'm going to build me a bunker.
Right.
You know, who do I go to make sure I can do that? Because again, I'm going to take it all, please, you got approved for it, I bring it to you to inspect, make sure that what the bunker I'm building, 3 stories down and whatever,
Well, let me tell you that the bunker's going to require engineering. Okay, so before you go spend money on the engineering, that's when you need to go to your zoning entity. Depending upon where you live, whether that be in El Paso, within the district of El Paso County, or whether you're in the city of Colorado Springs, the city of Fountain, town of Monument, each one of those has their own, borders, basically. So go to the assessor's website, El Paso County Assessors, and that will, tell me if I'm wrong, Amy, that will give you an idea or give you the zoning district that you are in, right?
The first thing that you'll see is whether it's in. The first thing that you'll see is whether you're in El Paso County would be the first listing down below. If it doesn't say El Paso County, it says City of Colorado Springs. That's a good indicator that you're in the City of Colorado Springs. You can look at the fire districts also. That's a good clue.
Got it now.
Michael brought up a point too.
Yeah, and two things.
No,
If
we're
you're
not-
in,
Go
either in the city of Colorado Springs, they're right down across the hall here. You could go there right now and go talk to them. And if you're in the county, they're right underneath us. So if you're in either one of those two areas, this is a one-stop shop. You can go to zoning and to regional building department at the same time. You take care of that all at one time. The only ones that are out of our jurisdiction, and you have to also understand that for electronic submittal, you have to be either in the city of Colorado Springs or in El Paso County. You can't do electronic submittal for Fountain. They're not on our system yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
We're
They're
getting
getting there, but not yet. Green Mountain Falls and Monument, those are still not linked up with our system to allow for electronic submittal. You can only do that.
We are
in
working with
Colorado Springs.
those entities to get them on board for the electronic. Our goal is to have, obviously, to allow all residents within our jurisdiction to be able to submit electronically, save them, trips down here. So back to your question. Basically, what I'm talking about as far as getting the go-ahead from them is really just the initial go-ahead. Is this something I can do? And once they say yes, then that's when you engage with your designers or you start doing the drawings yourself. Those same zoning entities will be a required sign-off on the plan set that you bring us. So we'll look at it through construction, we'll look at it through enumeration, we'll look at it through mechanical. Then you'll see a short list underneath our sign-offs that says outside agencies required. Then you'll need to take that, the proposed drawing that you have, take it to them. They've already given you a verbal that says, yes, this is something you can do. Now they're going to look at the specifics of what you want to do. And once we have all those sign-offs for that project, that's when we can issue the permit, when everybody has released it for permit. Does that make sense? Okay.
Is that fairly new? Like I said, we didn't even know that Fountain had a planning department when we did our remodel. So.
It's an interior remodel. There are project types that don't require.
Actually, 2/3 of the house basically came off when we rebuilt. We took the roof off, open vaulted it, and 2/3 of the house had to get rebuilt. The foundation was never done properly.
So interior, exterior remodel, plus maybe a little bit of an addition. Yeah, that would have required a zoning plan review. Absolutely.
Basically, y'all didn't push that issue where they didn't tell us. We didn't know that it even existed until like 13. So even though we lived there, we didn't just move to that area, came down here and got permits. So we didn't even know that they should have approved it. We didn't have any problem getting the permit. That's all I was wondering.
Who stamped that drawing?
Well, based on the project description and project type, that list of what's required is automatically generated. So it could be a simple snafu as easy as the project description was put on wrong. As if it was listed as interior remodel. Typically, interior remodels throughout any jurisdiction we serve does not require an outside agency review because all the work's occurring inside. It's not going to affect anything that you can see from the curb.
Does the zoning office have a list of required documentation? So when you show up and say, hey, I want to add an addition onto my house that connects my house to my detached garage, then you're not just showing up and saying, hey, this is what I want to do, and you have like all of the paperwork or whatever they need, like how do you know what they need so they can approve that and then we can come on to you?
Well, each one of the 8 with Woodland Park that we serve are different. And we don't really want to be the holders of those documents because they will change, at times they change their requirements. So it's all on them. You got to go straight to them to get that info, and do that as one of the first things.
And for some entities, we collect use tax, because there is always use tax when you're going to do a project. There's taxes involved with purchasing of materials and the labor. And for some jurisdictions, that comes as a part of the service here, but not all of them. Sometimes the City of Manitou Springs and Fountain, they all have use tax requirements. So you really, really have to get in touch with your particular zoning authority and ask.
Any other questions regarding, I mean, as much as we can answer on the zoning side of things? Okay. So we're going to run through a couple examples. This one is a deck project. And I've got a screenshot of basically our handout, which kind of gives you an example of what a deck plan needs to look like. Michael?
I'm going to see if this little thing really actually works. Does that work? No. No laser pointer. I wonder if it's on. Decks are fairly simple. They're fairly straightforward. What we usually don't get is the plan in the manner that we want to see it. And that is a great example of how we would like to see a deck plan. It should look like you're standing on top of it and looking down. You want to have all the parts and pieces labeled. You want to have those joists labeled. The joists are the small lines running north to south on that drawing. And you'll have the on-center spacing. You're going to tell us you're going to, for example, use 2x8s at 16 inches on center, or perhaps you're going to put on some manufactured composite decking, and you want to put it on a 45-degree angle, and you'll find that that the manufacturer's installation instructions are going to tell you that you have to put those joists on a 12-inch spacing if you're going to put that decking on diagonally. So we're going to want to see that, and we're going to want to know how you're going to put your decking on, what it's going to be. So we want that kind of labeled on the plan somewhere. That drawing there shows you a deck with a cantilever. A cantilever is a projection that's beyond the beam. The beam is, well, the house is at the top. The joists come down. The beam is the line that runs across about 2/3 of the way down that plan. And the beam is supported by piers. Those concrete caissons or piers are the circles that you see along that beam. So we need to know how far away that beam is from the house. That tells us what the span of the joists are, because that's the span that we're going to use to determine whether they're strong enough. And we need to know what the spacing is between each one of those piers, because the spacing between the piers tells us whether or not the beam size is going to be adequate, and it also is going to tell us how big around those piers are going to have to be to support the load. There's one that works.
There's an on button.
Oh, there's an on button. I missed the on button. So yeah, so the piers, we got 5 piers along that deck. Now on our website, we have this handout. And on that handout, there's also a series of charts. And those, okay, so if you have the handout and you're looking at the deck page on the back page, you're going to see a handout, and along the top, it's going to have the span lengths, I believe. And then down the side, it's going to tell you the material or the, well, I don't even remember how it looks now. Let me get one of those so I know what I'm talking about. And this is kind of going to what Shelby was talking about having the information. Now, let me preface this with, if you come in here with a deck plan and you've drawn that plan and you're missing some of those dimensions, we're going to ask you what they are. And as long as you can tell us, we'll fill them in. And if we can determine them, you know, intuitively from how long your deck is, and you really want to have 3 piers here, well, we'll figure what those dimensions are. And in the 15 minutes that you sit down with us, almost without exception, we can get the information on the page and get your plan approved to get you out the door. That being said, this single span table here, in order for you to get the information right when you come in, The left-hand column, the joist span, that's what I was talking about. That's the span from the house out to that beam. And that's a simple single-span table with no cantilever, that first one. The second one has a 2-foot cantilever, and that's that area, again, from the beam to the end. This would be where these joists come, hang over that beam, and project beyond the end of the beam. That's what we call cantilever. And that we have 2-foot cantilevers and 3-foot cantilevers prescriptively called out on this page. And then if you read across the top, if you were to start, say, at the very, very top of the joist span of 6 feet, and you kind of read across. So if you have a 6-foot joist span out to that beam with no cantilever, and you're at 12 inches on center, you can use 2x6 lumber for your joists. And you can use 2x6 lumber if you're 16 inches on center or 24 inches on center. And you'll see how, as you go down that column, and you'll see how, as the joist span out from the house increases, the size of the lumber is going to increase. And then the second part of the table is the part that people don't understand quite as easily. Across the top, the 5-foot, 6-foot, 7-foot, those are the distances between your supports, between these piers. 5 foot between those piers, 6 foot between those piers, that will change what the size of that beam is. And the way to use the chart is to kind of follow down to get to your joist span and then scroll across to the distance between your piers. And that will tell you what your beams are. And then the third part of that chart talks about the footings, and these are the piers. And what we have on here are diameters. So those two numbers there, the 8/8, and the first number is for what we call the outside piers. So those would be the piers that are on each end of the beam. And they're usually handling, well, they're always handling less load, so they're always going to be the smallest dimension. And then the inside piers would be the 3 other piers in this case. And those piers are going to have a larger diameter when your deck gets bigger, because those piers are handling load from both sides of that beam. And you can just follow that across. If you've got, for example, a 10-foot joist span, pretty typical deck, and you're going to put your joists or your piers every 8 feet, that 10-foot deck is going to have a double 2x10 beam, and it's going to have 8-inch outside piers and 12-inch inside piers.
I will point
And that's
out
even
that
if you have 8 piers across instead of just 5. The outside piers still are the small ones. All the inside piers would be the same.
And I will say that our reviewers are really good about helping value engineer things as well. I mean, if you come in with, a deck that's only 6x10, but you've got a triple 2x12 beam out there supporting that outside edge with posts and piers at 2 feet on center, that's way overkill. These guys will point that out and say, look, you really only need this size beam, and you really only need 2 posts at each, or 2 posts at the ends. Can save you all these. I think you guys do a great job of that.
And those, all that is assuming that you're using standard lumber. You can either, these charts actually now have been sized for, I think, number 1 cedar. Is it number 1 structural cedar? So sometimes you come in, and if you're going to use southern yellow pine number 1 treated lumber, that's stronger than what the values are on this page. And sometimes we can reduce the size of your, the dimension of your lumber based on the fact that you're going to use a different species of wood to create your deck.
In order for us to publish these tables, we basically had to use the weakest type of lumber that is allowed, just to be conservative. If you guys are going with the stronger lumber, then these may not apply.
So a few special things here. The things that sometimes trip people up, you'll come in and perhaps your house, oh, I didn't mean to hit that. There we go. Gotta be careful. So the house here, we're assuming at this point that foundation follows that house right down to the ground at that point. If it does not, if the floor of your house is cantilevered over the wall, just like this is shown as a cantilever deck, the code does not allow us to allow you to connect to that cantilevered house. What happens here, and if this were to be cantilevered out, This rim board here that's attaching to these joists would only be held on by nails. And so for us, we can't allow you to attach a deck ledger to that because those nails, we don't know what the value of those nails are, and there's nothing to adequately hold that rim board onto your joists. So we would require you at that point to put another beam along the house. And this goes for even joists or even decks that had been previously built. Even if you're rebuilding a deck on a cantilevered floor, we're going to ask for you either to be able to prove to us that that cantilever was designed to carry that deck, and typically that means that the builder, when he built that house, put some inverted hangers or some sort of a mechanical connection between the existing joists and that rim board to allow that deck to be supported from that rim board. And if we can't prove that, we have to put another beam in there at that cantilevered floor situation. And that's often the case with a cantilevered house. The other thing that comes up a lot are these are cantilevers that occur in the middle of your deck. So this is just maybe a popped out family room or something like that. We have a prescriptive method of attaching double joists on either side of that allow you to work around that without having to put that beam in there. And that's pretty clearly spelled out on the plan. One more thing that you have to watch out for, stairs. Home Depot will sell all kinds of things that are not code compliant. They sell things all the time that they will let you put up, and they don't even tell you that you need either a building permit to do it or that the stairs, the pre-manufactured stairs that they might provide you at Home Depot probably are not going to work on your deck, because every deck has a different height off the ground, and there's no way they could create enough of those to make it work. You would have to build your deck to those stairs as opposed to the other way around, because the stair rise and run can't vary more than 3/8 of an inch. So there's no way that Home Depot can possibly know what the height of your deck is. So don't waste your money on their pre-manufactured stair stringers, because they're probably not going to work.
I'm quite sure what Mike meant was your local home improvement store.
Yeah, those guys, the big box stores. Yeah, decks are pretty easy. We do need to know if you're going to cover it. We're going to ask you that question. If you're going to cover it, that's going to change the size of those piers. If you're going to use the same piers to support the cover, we're going to want to know whether you're going to put a hot tub on it, because obviously a hot tub adds to the weight. Now we can figure that all out. We don't need this to do that. You'll just tell us where on the deck the hot tub's going to go. We can assign a certain loading to that area of the deck so that we can make the piers strong enough so that you're not going to have your deck start to sink because your hot tub is weighing it down. Shelby also needs to know whether or not your electrical meter is on the house, where the deck is going to attach, because the deck could affect the height of that meter, and the meter has to be at a certain height in order to be code compliant. So if you have an electrical meter back there, we're going to send you to Shelby. He's going to talk to you about that.
Can I jump in there 1 minute?
Mm-hmm.
So back again to if you come in and you ask questions, to be able to put all the variables that Mike was alerting you to, all the different, all the different permutations to a job like this, it's really hard. There's no handout that's going to have all that. There's no handout that's going to have the information you just told you about the meter. Use this as a resource. We can really steer you away from a lot of things that would be painful in these projects if you come in and sit down. I mean, the handouts are a great place to start, but there's just no way to put all the information that's necessary on those handouts. So note the walkthrough hours and use this as a resource that way.
And that being said, I would venture to say that probably 95% of every deck permit application that comes in through permitting goes out as approved. There's very few times that we can't get it fixed in 15 minutes and get you out the door.
To touch on the site plan, plot plan at the beginning of the slide, that is a zoning requirement, but we would look at that as well to verify where on the property that you're putting the deck, on which side of the house you might be attaching it to. Our permits, our plans are address-based, so you want to have your address on there, of course. you'll know if you're in a floodplain. That would be a required department to go through if you're paying flood insurance. That your insurance is requiring you to have. So that would be another department you'd want to go through before you pull your permit. Enumerations would not be a required department for that.
Good with that one?
Any questions on that?
Basement finish. Basement finish, also a pretty easy project, pretty easy for us to get done in 15 minutes. The most important things that you need to know about a basement finish is we need the plan labeled. We need to know what you're creating with these new walls that you're putting up. And if you are creating a bedroom, that bedroom has to have a required emergency escape and rescue opening, commonly known as an egress window, with an egress window well. Egress windows in the current code are required to be in a basement, 5 square feet. I think some of our handouts may still say 5.7 square feet. That was in the 2009 code that was required. Basements and main level egress windows can be 5 square feet. A standard 4040 slider window takes care of that. If you had a house that was built before the year 2000, the egress window only had to be 4.5 square feet. So a 3040 sliding window in that house would comply. We looked that up to see when the house was built. We'll look it up to see what the assessor says your square footage in your basement is, and basement finishes are assessed. Our fees are based on square footage, so we're going to try to be pretty accurate about how many square feet you're going to finish in that basement. To go back to the egress window, the window well depth in the current code, the required depth from the window glass to the outside of that window well is 36 inches. It may need a ladder if more than 44 inches from the finished floor to get out of that window well. It will need a ladder. If the house was built before 2000, that window well can be 30 inches deep. But if it's not 30 inches deep, you can't just make it 30 inches deep. You're going to have to dig it out and make it code compliant with current codes. The other thing we're going to put on the plan is smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. The code requires a smoke detector inside your bedrooms, and a smoke detector and a carbon monoxide detector have to be outside the bedroom in the immediate vicinity. And whenever you get a building permit, that's going to be the one thing that always is going to come up, no matter what the permit is for. Even if you're going to replace your water heater, you're going to get a stamp on your plan or a note to tell you that you need to upgrade your smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. That's part of the permitting process. You always have to do that whenever you get a permit. You have to bring those up to current codes. It's typically the way the building inspectors look at it, it's at their discretion, but we look at scope of work. If you're doing a basement finish, those smoke detectors need to be hardwired and interlinked with at least each other. And if you had a smoke detector down there that was interlinked with the rest of the house, we're going to require you to attach onto that one so that they all are wired together. If you're doing a basement finish and you can't easily get to the 3rd floor to link all those smoke detectors together, the building inspectors normally will let you put in a battery-operated smoke detector. Now, the carbon monoxide detectors don't have to be connected, and they can be plug-in. You can just plug them into an outlet. And carbon monoxide, whether people really understand that or not, is very much the same relative gravity as oxygen, and it will travel high and low, so there's no requirement for a carbon monoxide detector to be at any height. It can be anywhere in the house, within the prescribed distance from the bedroom door. And you have to have a smoke detector on every level of the house, regardless of whether or not you have a bedroom on that level. You have to, and even if you're stepping down, that's also something that comes up sometimes. You put a little laundry room off your kitchen, and you have to step down into that laundry room to access it. That's a different level in the house. also requires its own smoke detector on that level. So basement finishes, we want the entire basement floor plan. That's very important for mechanical review. They need to know how big the basement is and where you're drawing your combustion air from. So we can't just do, if you're doing a little partial basement finish, it doesn't help us just to have that part of the basement. We really need the whole plan. The bathroom, we need to know where the fixtures are. You just can't draw the bathroom. We need, because there are certain requirements in front of the toilet, we have to know that you have the proper space in front of the toilet. There's ceiling heights. Ceiling height is standard at 7 foot. If you have a basement that was built a long time ago and they didn't build it high enough, we have a process through which you can get a variance, because we're not going to tell you you can't finish your basement, but you will have to jump through some extra hoops to get that permit pulled, to get that approved. Typically doesn't affect you getting the permit, it affects you getting the final inspection. And you have to go, sometimes you have to go before the variance review board. We have what's called consent calendar items, which have certain heights that are okay. You don't have to come down and ask for forgiveness, but you do have to get that variance paid for. It's an extra fee that's connected to the project. Basement walls. A lot of people don't understand the floating wall concept. The floating wall allows you to build onto this slab, because basement slabs are just sitting there floating on the dirt. There's nothing holding them down. There's nothing keeping them from rising and falling. If you have a plumbing leak down there and water gets underneath that slab and you have expansive soil under there, that slab is going to move. And if we allow you to build walls all the way from that basement slab to the structure above, well, now that's going to push up on your house, and it's going to affect the structure of the house. So what we require you to do is put these floating walls in here. That's 1.5 inches between those two plates. It's pretty easy to do. You just put your plate down that you're going to build the wall, where you're going to build the wall. You put that plate down, then you put a few blocks on top of it, build your next wall, roll that up on top. Then you put the spikes in next to those blocks, and then you pull those blocks back out, and that allows that 1.5 inch gap there for movement of that slab, so you don't destroy your house if something goes wrong in the basement. So you have to do that. That's pretty much it. If you've got your egress windows and you've got, to get a final inspection on a basement, you don't need your carpet in, you don't need your doors in. Doors aren't required by the building code. You don't need your molding in. You need your drywall, mostly to protect the wiring. And there's, well, that wouldn't apply to basement finishes. If you're building a new house, there's a new code that requires fire protection of that basement ceiling, that those floor joists need to be protected. And so now they require you to put in sheetrock, even if you don't finish the basement. We don't require that for basement finishes of houses that were built under earlier codes. So you don't have to worry about that if you're just doing a basement finish. If you put a closet in a room, we're going to call it a bedroom. So if you put a closet in and you're going to call it an office, well, that's fine, but if that has a closet, we're going to look at it as a bedroom, because it could be, and somebody might use it that way someday. So we're going to require that egress window be in that room, and that you have a smoke detector in that room, smoke detector and carbon monoxide detector outside of that room. We have done we have an interpretation, a code interpretation on our website that says if you have an alcove in a room that is deeper than 16 inches, that could be construed to be a closet, we're going to call that a bedroom.
If I could maybe just jump in?
Yeah.
And back to, come on in, there's a whole lot of detail that we're kind of immersing you in. We're not expecting you to remember all that stuff. And usually if you're doing one of these projects, you don't necessarily want to...
Huh?
What's that?
There's going to be a test after this. No.
Yes, and you've already passed. So you're not going to be able to remember all this stuff. You don't want to necessarily become a contractor to do a project at your house. But come on in and talk to us. Once again, I'm going to hammer that as much as I can. Come on in, and obviously Mike's very knowledgeable on this stuff, and he can steer you around all sorts of the pitfalls. And that'll, you come in, and then you don't spend the money and have us tell you need to change it.
I figure I'm just going to tell you as much as I can possibly think of, and something's going to click that you needed to know. So any questions on basement finish? I didn't ask about decks, but Oh, Justin's going to do mechanical
morning.
first. All right, good.
Basement finishes for mechanical mainly pertain to verifying that we have all the life safety in place for that. As we have gas-fired appliances down there, they're going to produce carbon monoxide. We need to make sure that we're getting that carbon monoxide out of the home so the residents and the occupants are safe. One of the other portions is ventilation. As the basement's going to be concealed mainly below grade, we need to make sure that we're getting the additional ventilation in there, and that's one of the other portions that come through with what Michael was speaking about of windows and the operation of the windows. We can meet ventilation requirements for a room but based off of the square footage of that room and the size of that window opening. If the size of the window opening equivalates to 4% of that square footage of that room can be naturally ventilated. If it does not, then we need to bring some additional air in through the air device, whether that be a furnace, an air handler or so, from directly outdoors and tie that into it. So that way, anytime that the system turns on, the diffusers that are in those rooms will bring that outside air into those rooms so we're ventilated. Another portion of that is the combustion air requirements for those appliances. We make high efficiency appliances and then we still have standard appliances. A high efficiency appliance is anything that's 90% or above, and standard is at 80%. An 80% appliance does not bring its own combustion air in. We're drawing that combustion air from an indoor location. So once we start compartmentalizing a basement, we're taking that big space of volume, or the big volume of space that we had, and we're compartmentalizing it off into certain individual rooms. Per the code, there's only certain rooms that we can draw combustion air from. Bedrooms, bathrooms, closets, and surgical rooms are the ones that are eliminated from drawing combustion air from. So at that point, you need to make sure that where you're drawing that from the mechanical room, you have a path that is not leading you through one of those areas. There is some exceptions to those rules that we can work through to get you there. Most people don't like the exceptions because it's, say, you're accessing your furnace or your water heater through a bathroom. At that point, the only way to do it is to really louver the bathroom door and the mechanical room door, so you've lost that privacy of using the bathroom in there with louvered doors. So some of that is good knowledge to have beforehand when you're starting your design process of how you want to finish that basement out, because you may not like the answers that you get of how you're going to have to accommodate to meet these safety requirements with your design. Just like Shelby said, it's always a great idea to come in. Yes, sir. A gas dryer would also require combustion air. It could be a high-low grill, it could be a louvered door, there could be no door. There's only a certain amount of routes to get to the combustion air path per the International Fuel Gas Code. That's one of the reasons I say it's a good idea to stop by and take a look with one of us. We're more than happy to sit with you at the counter, take a look at what your proposed design is, and give you some options that would work with that design.
Cool.
Any questions?
Any other questions on basement finish? All right, we're going to fly through the next example because this is just your shed, your accessory structure, detached garage type of thing. A lot of the requirements are similar to a deck, except now instead of just looking at a floor level, we're looking at a roof level plus a floor level. So one big question we get is, my foundation required to be engineered? If this accessory structure is less than 750 square feet, you do have the option of utilizing a monolithic slab, which is just a single pour with turned down edges. We've got a sketch on this handout specifically that shows you how that can be done. First step, again, contact zoning authority. Make sure that what you want to build can be built in the place you want it to be. Once you know that you're good to go, then come see us. And if you come to us with a shed that's 196 square feet, we're going to tell you you don't need us, because a building permit's not required for accessory structures less than 200 square feet when tied in with a residential property. Again, that doesn't alleviate you or get you away from the requirements of the zoning side, which may tell you you can't build it in the setback or that type of thing. So again, talk to them first. Oh yeah, the decks, going back to decks, that number is 200 square feet as well. 200 square foot deck, less than 3 feet above grade, does not require a permit. As long as it's detached from the house, that's right. The minute you attach it to the house, then it's going to require a permit.
Does that include like an awning that would be attached to the house that has been attached to the deck?
If it's attached to the house, it needs a permit. Think of it that way. Anything you're attaching to the main structure is going to require a permit, with few exceptions. Let's see. So floor framing plan, or floor plan and framing plan, basically real similar to the deck. You're going to show us the framing members, which direction they're going, how far the span is, what exactly is supporting them. In an accessory structure, you're going to end up with headers over your doors, and your garage door, your man door, headers, trimmers, king studs. Show all that information on the plan set. Draw the plan to scale, or if you don't have a scale and you're just sketching it, at least throw some dimensions on there for us. One building section, kind of cut that building right in half, open it up, and show us a picture of it from that view. Engineered trusses, again, those come from your truss manufacturer. Make sure you got a seal on those. And then anything non-conventional construction. It's an example of non-conventional construction we've seen lately.
Yeah, pole structure.
Okay, pole structures or even metal frame structures. Those are going to require an engineer because we can't get there through the IRC. Does anybody plan on doing a detached garage or a shed this summer? Got any questions on that, or should we just move to the next one? Yeah.
In my neighbor next door, it looks like the city council is approving, like you can have a second residence on the property.
Okay. I've got, yep, it's called accessory dwelling unit. The building code allows that now. Yeah, I guess this would be a good spot to talk about it. The building code currently allows that. Even though the zoning code may say that you can't have an additional residence on a property that's zoned R1, which is for single family only, they are talking about changing that. If that occurs, that's not going to change how we look at things. The problem you're going to run into is if you're trying to do an accessory dwelling unit, if you do it in its own structure, so detached, is going to be much easier than trying to do it as the city is calling it an integrated ADU. An integrated means you're going to take a portion of your basement and you're going to build it with its own kitchen, its own bathroom, all the requirements of a dwelling unit, which is eating, living, sleeping, cooking, and sanitation. You've got all 5 elements in one spot and you want to make that a separate dwelling unit, you can. However, you're going to need 1 hour separation, which means you're going to have a 1 hour floor ceiling assembly between your new dwelling unit and your old. You're going to need 1 hour supporting construction. And remember, all this 1 hour rating, you're trying to put onto walls that currently exist. They have electrical in them. They're already there. So although the building code says you can do it, it's hard. And it's going to cost money. So be aware of that if you're looking at doing that.
So, if you wanted to build an apartment in your backyard,
Mm-hmm.
is it possible or not possible?
That is possible. Yep, it's going to be like building a small house out of the IRC. It's going to have all the elements that the main house would have. You don't have to worry about fire separation at that point because there is an exception in the code that says, two structures, one being an accessory structure on the same lot, don't require fire separation. You've got to have a certain distance between the two, but as far as rated walls, you would not.
What is a mobile structure like a tiny house?
Tiny houses are licensed by DMV. They are reviewed, or they are constructed per an RVIA code, which means they're a vehicle, not a building. So we do not get involved in tiny homes. Again, talk to the zoning department, make sure they'll allow it. That's the big thing.
How about the utilities of those?
On the accessory dwelling units, yes, they do require separate taps, separate meters, because you're getting a separate address. And this, is that right? If it's a residence, if it meets all those 5 criteria where you actually have a true separate dwelling unit, then it's going to get its own address and it's going to get its own meters. If you're missing one of those elements, say you put everything in except for a permanent stove, meaning no 220 or no gas line to the stove, then you don't have cooking. So now you're only meeting 4 of those. Then it becomes just what this is here on the screen, an accessory structure, not an accessory dwelling unit. And in that case, your water line can come from the main house, and your electrical can come from the main house, all coming off of 1 meter. So like I said, it can be done. It's just going to be hard, and it's going to be expensive. That's up to the zoning guys. That's the lot coverage thing that they're going to look at. So the last example that we want to run through real quickly, because we want to give you guys some time for some questions. Well, I guess I should just ask, does anybody want to build their own home? There's one. Okay. We'll go through it. So again, site plan for zoning, they're going to need to know where you want to put it. Enumerations has a big part in this as far as a new single-family home.
So the first requirement would be the site plan, plot plan, one and the same. That would require for you to show your entire lot or parcel with the dimensions, your driveway access, where you propose to put your home, north arrow, where the street name is located in the street location, the legal description, tax ID number, which that information that you have with your closing documents, but can be found on the El Paso County Assessor's website. The new site is a little bit more difficult to find the tax schedule number. That's usually right above your address, 10-digit number. And then your legal description, usually if it's within the city limits, there is a subdivision name and a lot number. Out east, it's usually a meets and bounds legal description. Those are required on your plot plan with your address, along with the plot plan and the site plan. All those things that we covered before for basement finishes and decks, everything that I just stated for the new home, all those requirements are needed as well on those projects.
So building the house, we need the floor plan. We need the floor plan just like we did for that basement finish, with all the rooms labeled, bedrooms need egress. Yeah, there's a whole list. We need a foundation plan, not necessarily a design. The foundation design will come with the soils report when the inspector's there for his first inspection. But the foundation plan will show us the dimensions of the foundation. It's going to locate all the pads that are internal to the house, so we know where the supporting construction is, so we're going to know what the length is on all the beams that are going to be used. We need structural plans. Again, these don't have to be stamped. If you feel qualified, you can go ahead and draw your own plan. We need all the beams labeled, the floor framing members labeled. We need to know whether or not you've got a walkout basement, for example. If that's the case, we're going to need the stud sizes for that and the header locations in the walkout basement. We always need exterior elevations. We're going to need those also on your accessory dwelling unit. We're going to want to see what that structure looks like when it's erected. These are just no perspective drawings. We just want two-dimensional idea of each facet of the building. It can get a little complicated if you've got an oddly shaped building, but if you have a square structure, we're going to be looking for 4 drawings, 4 different views of the house. We always need at least one section detail. We prefer to have it through the stairs because we're going to want to know that you know the information that's required for the stair rise and run. So typically we'll see a section through the plan that'll show us the different levels of the floor. We need to know what the story heights are. So we need to know the level from the basement slab to the top of the first floor, top of the first floor to the top of the second floor. We need to know the height of the roof. We're going to want to know what the pitch is on your roof, so we know how to know what kind of roof covering you're going to use. Everything basically needs to be labeled. In that section view, we're going to want to see your wall section. We're going to want to see what the on-center spacing is of your studs, whether or not you're going to use continuous sheathing on the outside. That's going to tell us a lot about how you're bracing that house, because the house needs to be braced for wind loads and as well as gravity loads. So we know how the house is. We've got to make sure it's going to stand up. It's quicker and easier if you get an engineer to do the structural aspect of the house, because we're going to take a lot less time to review that, because we count on that engineer who stamped that plan to have done all the calculations that otherwise we'll have to do. Again, not required, but it makes things a little quicker. The trusses will always need stamped truss engineering. You can do a rafter framed house. We have software that can tell us how to review the rafters. Typical problem we see sometimes is people who want to put a collar tie in to tie their rafters together. Some of that can be done prescriptively, but it doesn't always work. Sometimes if you're going to use a collar tie to brace those rafters, you may need engineering. And there may just be sections of the house that don't work, that need engineering. A lot of times we can't get prescriptively to your wind bracing requirements, and we may have one wall that's bad. You have a lot of windows. You have a beautiful view of Pikes Peak. You want those windows on the wall. Well, you might have to go to an engineer to get that particular wall designed where the rest of the plan can be unstamped. Anything I miss on that? Any questions
Just a few mechanical.
on construction?
What kind of order and timeline do these things need to come? Like, plot plan first, right?
When, it all needs to be submitted simultaneously. We need everything at the same time. You can do your homework, in whatever order you want. You can certainly go to zoning and be working with them to get your land platted even. We'll still review your construction plans. You just won't be able to get the permit until the zoning authority has finished their work and you have an approved plat for your property. But we'll still go ahead and do our part. And then one thing I don't think we mentioned is that we do route the plans as necessary through the different authorities if they're here in our building. If it's a city project, we'll get it to zoning. You don't have to come and grab the plan and then hand carry it up to zoning. We'll do that routing for you. And if you've got a house in the county and you're putting it on a septic system, the health department comes in here and reviews those plans, so you don't have to hand carry that to the health department to get a septic review. Justin.
Quick question. To all of these, particularly like the basement, so I haven't seen anything about electrical drawings. On the basement, it don't submit electrical drawings.
You don't need, for single-family dwellings, we don't do electrical plans and we don't do plumbing plans. You are required to be code compliant in both of those areas. And you're free to come in here during your plan review and sit down with electrical and with plumbing and make sure that you know what you need and make sure you're up to speed on that. But the only two required departments, required reviews, are going to be construction and mechanical.
So once again, if you come in, you're not required to see electrical or plumbing. Gesundheit. But you can. So it's one of those things, the vagaries of that are really not worth going into, but if you're going to do electrical, especially as a homeowner, you don't want to become an electrician, you can sit down, we don't approve anything, but we can look at what you're doing and say, oh yeah, you can do that, or oh, don't do that, that's going to cost a bunch of money. Same with plumbing. And we keep cycling back around to where you can come in and talk to us, and we can really keep you from spending a bunch of money you don't want to, is the most blatant way I can put it. Because we can look at what you're doing, we don't approve it, we don't review it, but we can sure look at it and say, don't do that. Or yes, that's good.
I guess I asked because you talked about, smoke detectors have to be hardwired, so power to stuff.
Yeah, and we can sure help you with that. We can also look at make suggestions on how you can do it with the least amount of damage to finish. Fishing, in other words, fishing the wire from one location to another. There's a lot of things that we can do for you that aren't officially part of what we're talking about here, which is basically just the human interaction. Look at your project. You have a question like that, and perhaps how to accomplish it. Not necessarily we don't design it, but we can sure make suggestions. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Anybody else have a question on the electrical? All right, thanks.
So just
Mechanical on a new home is, it gets fairly involved. It's designed mainly around the structure of the home, the insulation values of the home, and there's certain mandates that we have to keep. As we're in a cooler climate here, our main focus is heating, because if we don't provide enough heat, people can freeze and it becomes a life safety issue. We don't mandate cooling in our region. However, we do mandate that the ductwork be sized for cooling for any additional people who are going to take over the possession of that property at a later date. If they choose to put AC in there, they don't have to tear out the entire system to add that AC to that system. What we require is what's called a manual J, a manual D, and a manual S. They're heat loss calculations. The manual, that's the manual J. The manual S is the equipment that's going to go in there, and the manual D is the design that you're actually going to lay this ductwork out in. They show us all the elements of that heating and cooling system, the size of the ductwork, the CFM that's going to come out of each register, the ventilation that's going to be tied in, like what we discussed with the basement finish. And all of those elements have to be done off of a certain we have two programs that RBD accepts. They're called Right Soft or Elite. Those programs are done typically by mechanical designers, and they input all of the data that's pertinent to the house, the size of the windows, the elevation of the windows, the size of the doors, the elevation of the doors, the insulation factors in the floors, the ceilings, the walls, the U factors associated with the windows and doors. Once everything is combined together, it tells us how much heat is going to be lost out of that structure. Our goal is to make sure that we put a piece of equipment back inside there that will overtake that loss. So by providing all of that documentation, that's what we do here at RBD, is we verify that in plan review. We'll also send our inspectors out to field verify that the installation meets what was shown in the design, what was shown in those calculations, and then also that everything was installed properly, sealed, and we're not losing all of that air that we're trying to push to those certain areas. The review on that is a little bit lengthier. You'll never be able to get a brand new home walkthrough at the walkthrough counters. Those are plans that will have to be submitted because it takes us more than the 15 minutes allotted at the walkthrough.
Okay, so what I think we're going to do here, because that's really our last slide, we just go into the question and answer. We did take up the full hour and a half. How many are sticking around for the Q&A class after this? Okay. Well, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to have my reviewers be out there in the hallway. If you guys want to talk to them about a discipline-specific question, if you need to talk to Justin for a mechanical question, we'll be available for the next half hour, but we'll go ahead and let Greg and his group get set up for the next class that starts, I believe, at 10. Any last comments or questions for us?
anything and everything. So basically, you're welcome to come in and ask any question you want. If you only have one question, the benefit of it is maybe your neighbor next to you will have a question that'll benefit you as well. So open to all. One other thing I want to mention before you guys take off is when I came on board, one of the things that I added was social media. So if you guys are into social media, it's a good way to stay up to date on some of the different things that we're pushing. A lot of classes like this, code changes that might be coming, different things that our plan reviewers are starting to see, some scam alert red flags, some of the things our inspectors are seeing. So there's a lot of good information there. We are now on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You guys are encouraged to join us, follow us on those, and don't forget about our website. We have a lot of great information on our website. We talked a lot about the handouts that we have, and we literally have just dozens and dozens of handouts that are all available to you guys for free. And again, you're encouraged to stick around for the next class and lunch after the Q&A class. So that's on us. So we'd love to have you. And if you get home tonight and you have something, oh, I should have asked this, we have another wave of classes tomorrow, and they're mainly geared towards the contractors, but you guys are certainly welcome, and you're welcome to come in and ask those questions if they pop up tonight. All right, thank you. These guys will be outside in the hall, and next class will be at 10 o'clock.